Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Hello English, the podcast where you learn real English through real conversations. I'm Sarah.
Okay, let's get into this. You share these source materials, excerpts from Qatar,
Then there's the explicit
oil,
planning with
vision,
Vision
and wealth.
2030, trying to
Our
diversify
mission
away
today
from
is
energy,
really to take a
investing
deep
in
dive
education
here.
and tech.
We want to understand
And
the
finally,
story
that
these sources are
backdrop
telling
of
about
political
Qatar,
stability and active global
specifically
diplomacy.
how it went from
It's presented as a whole package.
a pretty humble,
So the main takeaway
even
isn't just
poor
they got lucky
desert
finding
place.
gas.
Yeah,
Not at
very
all,
tough
according to
conditions
these
to
sources.
start
Would
with. The
become
narrative
one of the
is,
wealthiest
yes,
nations
the resources
anywhere.
were the
It's
foundation.
quite a
Absolutely
transformation.
essential.
But
It
it's
really
what they
is.
did with
And
that
the
windfall.
sources, they paint
The
this
strategic
picture
planning,
of
the massive
a small
investments, the
country,
nation
life
building,
focused
the
on
look towards the
basic
future that really
survival, pearl
explains
diving,
the story.
fishing,
The sources
real
suggest
hardship before
it's
the
about
oil
how
and
you
gas
manage
era.
the
Not a lot of
resource
natural
wealth, not just
advantages
how
like
you-
rivers or farmland. That's strategic
Exactly. So
architecture,
life
as you called
was
it earlier.
pretty
Building
basic.
for a
But the
future
material
beyond
you've got
fossil
here, it
fuels,
hints at
even while
these
fossil
absolutely
fuels are still
massive
paying the
shifts.
bills
Right.
today.
We're definitely
It's a
going to unpack
fascinating
the energy
tightrope
side,
walk.
oil and gas,
So,
obviously.
thinking about that,
but also what the sources
given
describe
Qatar's
as some
ambition
very,
is laid out in
strategic
Vision
money
2030,
moves and these
to really
really
shift
big
its
national
economy
ambitions.
while still being
Precisely.
so reliant on
It's
gas
presented
right
almost
now.
like a case study, you know?
What does their story
Finding
suggest
these
to you
huge
about the
resources,
challenge
but then
other
also
resource-rich
having this
nations face?
deliberate long-term
How do you balance
plan
using
for
today's
what to
wealth
do
with
them.
genuinely building a
That
different
combination
kind of
seems
sustainable
key,
economy for
according to
tomorrow?
these sources.
It seems like a
so
really
let's start with
complex
the
path.
sources do. With that first big turning point, finding oil, that was back in the 1940s. Must have been huge then.
It was significant, definitely. Brought in the first real wave of modern revenue external interest. And the sources really hammer this home, the real game changer, the thing that defines modern Qatar's wealth, that was natural gas.
Specifically the North Field.
The North Field, yes. The sources call it one of the largest non-associated gas fields anywhere, just colossal.
Not associated, meaning it's mostly gas, not just a byproduct of drilling for oil.
Exactly. It's this immense reserve. They share it with Iran, but Qatar's part alone is, well, enormous. And the strategy wasn't just finding it. The sources talk about the pivot they made towards exporting it as liquefied natural gas, LNG.
Right, chilling it down to ship it. That started when? The 90s.
Yeah, started ramping up in the 1990s. And that move, according to this material, is what really put them on the map as an energy giant.
So today, the sources say they're, one of the top 3 LNG exporters.
That's right. Up there with countries like Australia, the United States. Exporting on that kind of scale, it just fundamentally rewrites your economic reality.
Okay, so massive energy wealth check. But the sources make another really crucial point about why the country is so wealthy per person. The population size.
This is a critical piece of the puzzle presented here. Qatar's total population is around 3 million, give or take. But, and this is key, only about 300,000 are actually Qatari citizens.
Wow. So the vast majority are expats, foreign workers.
Overwhelmingly. And that distinction matters hugely because, according to the sources, the wealth generated from the gas is primarily directed towards benefiting the citizens.
So you're dividing this enormous energy pie among a really, really small number of citizens.
Exactly, which leads directly to that high per capita wealth figure. And the sources detail the results of that, things citizens get.
Like what specifically?
Well, the material mentions free healthcare, free education right through university, government help with housing, guaranteed jobs in many cases, even stipends for students while they're studying.
So a cradle-to-grave welfare system, basically funded by gas.
Pretty much. That's the picture painted of very strong social safety net for citizens, directly enabled by resource exports.
Okay, but it wasn't just about pumping gas and handing out benefits. The sources emphasized this strategic long-term thinking. They knew the gas wouldn't last forever.
Right. And that led to creating the Qatar Investment Authority, the QIA.
Their sovereign wealth fund.
Exactly. Think of it as the nation's savings account, but on a global investment scale. Its job, as described, is to take the profits from oil and gas.
The huge profits.
The huge profits, yeah, and invest them all over the world in all sorts of different things. Diversification.
And the sources give some pretty big examples of what the QIA owns stakes in.
Oh, yeah. It's quite a list. Things like the Shard building in London, Harrods department store.
Iconic stuff.
Right. Plus big chunks of shares in companies like Volkswagen, Barclays Bank, Sainsbury's supermarket chain in the UK, even pieces of like the Empire State Building's ownership company. And lots of prime real estate, New York, Paris, Singapore.
So the idea is to build up this massive portfolio that keeps generating money even if energy prices dip, or eventually when the gas runs low.
That's the strategy outlined. Build wealth for the future, totally separate from the day-to-day energy market. It's presented as very deliberate planning.
And speaking of making a statement and investing big, another huge project the sources cover is, of course, hosting the FIFA World Cup in 2022.
Yeah, winning that bid back in 2010 was historic, first time in the Middle East.
And they had to hold it in November, December because of the heat, which was unusual.
Right, but the sources focus a lot on the sheer scale of the investment to get ready for it. The number cited is over $200 billion.
$200 billion on what?
Basically everything. Brand new stadiums, obviously, but also roads, a whole new metro system for Doha, airport expansions, hotels, parks. It's described as almost a national transformation project tied to the World Cup.
So way more than just building some football pitches.
Oh, absolutely. The sources frame it as Qatar making this huge statement to the world, saying, look at us, we're modern, we're capable, we're a global player.
And aiming for lasting benefits beyond the tournament itself.
That seems to be the idea presented. Boosting tourism, attracting business, enhancing their international reputation for the long run, using the event as a catalyst for broader development.
Okay, here's another detail from the sources that kind of underlines their unique financial situation.
Yeah.
No personal income tax.
Yeah, that's a big one. It makes Qatar really attractive for, skilled foreign workers and international companies.
Because the government just doesn't need it.
Basically. The sources suggest the revenue from energy exports is so large it covers public services, those huge infrastructure projects, everything, without needing to tax people's salaries. It's a major perk funded by the gas wealth.
But again, they know that reliance is a risk. Which brings us to something called the Qatar National Vision 2030.
Right. This is their big strategic plan for the future, explicitly designed, according to the sources, to reduce that dependence on oil and gas over time.
Thinking ahead to when energy markets change or reserves decline.
Exactly. It's about economic diversification, building other pillars for the economy.
And the Vision 2030, it has 4 main parts.
Yeah, the sources lay out 4 pillars: human development, social, economic, and environmental. The economic one is really focused on creating new industries, new jobs, moving beyond just energy.
Like what kind of industries?
Things like technology, advanced education, healthcare, tourism, research and development. Building what they call a knowledge-based economy.
And to fuel that, the sources point to major investments in, well, people and ideas.
Definitely. A prime example mentioned is Education City in Doha.
Right, where they have campuses of famous international universities.
Exactly. Branches of places like Georgetown, Carnegie Mellon, Texas A&M. The idea described is bringing world-class education to Qatar to train the next generation of leaders and innovators right there.
Building human capital.
Precisely. And alongside that, they set up things like the Qatar Science and Technology Park, mentioned in the sources, to actively encourage R&D and new tech ventures. It's all part of that Vision 2030 push.
The sources also mention political stability as a factor.
Yes, the continuity of rule under the Al Thani family is cited as providing a stable backdrop for these long-term, ambitious plans. You need that consistency, arguably.
And beyond stability at home, they seem to play a pretty active role on the world stage.
Very much so, according to the material. Qatar's diplomacy is highlighted.
Like acting as a mediator in conflicts.
Yeah, the sources give examples like their involvement in talks between the U.S. and the Taliban, or mediating between Israel and Hamas at various points. That gives them influence.
And hosting Al Jazeera.
That's mentioned, too, as giving them a significant global voice. The sources suggest all this mediation, media, strong ties with both Western and regional powers helps build their international standing and soft power, which, can also support their economic goals.
Though the sources aren't purely celebratory, they do acknowledge some challenges, right?
Yes, it's important. The material does touch on complexities. Environmental issues get a mention. Qatar has a very high carbon footprint per person, largely due to the energy industry and desalination.
And labor issues.
That too. The reliance on that huge foreign workforce and the criticisms, particularly around the World Cup construction regarding worker conditions, those are noted. And of course, the underlying economic risks still being so tied to volatile global energy prices, despite the diversification efforts.
But the impression from the sources is that the leadership is aware of these things.
That's the suggestion, yeah. That these are recognized challenges they are working on, or at least acknowledging as part of their development path. It's not presented as a perfect picture.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. If you boil down what these sources are saying, what are the core ingredients of Qatar's, incredible wealth and transformation?
Based on this material, you've got a few key things stacking up. First, massive energy reserves, especially that LNG from the North Field. Second, the small citizen population, which concentrates the wealth.
Right.
Third, That strategic foresight creating the QIA to invest the money globally for the long term. Fourth, these huge, ambitious national projects like the World Cup used to build infrastructure and boost their profile.
The lack of income tax is an incentive.
That's another piece. Then there's the explicit planning with Vision 2030 trying to diversify away from energy, investing in education and tech. And finally, that backdrop of political stability and active global diplomacy. It's presented as a whole package.
So the main takeaway isn't just they got lucky finding gas.
Not at all, according to these sources. The narrative is, yes, the resources were the foundation, absolutely essential, but it's what they did with that windfall. The strategic planning, the massive investments, the nation building, the look towards the future that really explains the story. The sources suggest it's about how you manage the resource wealth, not just having it.
That strategic architecture, as you called it earlier, building for a future beyond fossil fuels, even while fossil fuels are still paying the bills today, is a fascinating tightrope walk. So, thinking about that, given Qatar's ambition, as laid out in Vision 2030, to really shift its economy while still being so reliant on gas right now, what does their story suggest to you about the challenge other resource-rich nations face? How do you balance using today's wealth with genuinely building a different kind of sustainable economy for tomorrow? It seems like a really complex path.